So we're going to be doing chapter 8 of what is projection. I'm just going to quickly go through the slides to get this part over. Let's see. So all the sessions are recorded and shared publicly to support others in these teachings. Have we got anyone new that's never been to any of the sessions before? Oh yes, Ellie, welcome. So Yink and I run here My Voice Book Club, which is an inspirational self-development books. This is what we've got on this week. So we've got, see, Michael Ryce tonight is joining us for Why Is This Happening to Me Again? We have children's story time tomorrow at 7, cardio workout at 6 AM Saturday, Sundays, and Sunday 8 AM Joe Dispenza's Project Coherence Meditation. Our 5 AM club will be back on the 4th of, no, it's not the 4th of August, it's September, the first week of September. And next book, monthly book, is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, and that is Thursday, the 7th of September at 10:30 AM and 8:30. And we have a Joe Dispenza online marathon, 24 hours. We're going a full 24 hours of 6 PM till 6 PM on Saturday the 2nd to the 3rd. It's one of our busiest events. We've got in-person events. We've got Liverpool this Wednesday and Manchester the 2nd Wednesday of the month. And that's all Law of Attraction teachings in Abraham Hicks. And that's in person. And pack your bags because we're off to Turkey. So we're also doing a Turkey retreat this year. If anybody wants to join, it's going to be Sunday the 22nd to the 27th. And it is literally putting all the teachings we have learnt through the book club into practice in person in the beautiful beaches and meditation on the rooftops. And yeah, a lovely retreat that one of the members, Melinda, owns. So we're off to Turkey. And we do have WhatsApp groups keeping people connected. And here My Voice Book Club runs non-profit events so everyone can take part regardless of financial status. But any donations for tonight's session or anything in relation to Michael Ryce's teaching, I ask for donations to go directly to him and supporting him in all these teachings as well. And appreciation for all this time that he shares in the book club. And we're just going to do some shoulder rolls because some of us carry a bit of tension from our day and we just like to loosen up ourselves up, ready for the session. So if you choose a comfortable sitting position, take a nice slow deep breath in, draw up the shoulders all the way to the ears. In through the nose and exhale through the mouth. Letting it all go. Nice deep breath in. And exhale. One more time, nice deep breath in. And exhale. And if you're open and willing and want to stand up and just release any tension from the body and just give it a quick shake out before we start the session. If you want to stay sat down, you can do it sat down, or you can stand up. Give it a shake out. So for those that don't know Michael Ryce or are new here, Michael Ryce is the founder and director of Heartland and Self-Healing Centre. Michael lectures and teaches in health and healing and true meaning of true forgiveness. The focus of the studies has combined body-mind principles, physics and ancestral Aramaic studies into a unique body of pioneering work in the field of self-healing, healing through relationships, anger and grief, resolution, world peace, and the inner process of forgiveness. And Michael is also married to Jeannie Ryce, who helps, supports a lot of what Michael, all these teachings. So if Michael wants to introduce himself and say hello, and then we'll go through the teachings of it.
Well, not sure what to say today. It's nice to see the group gathered and familiar faces, or at least names on the screen for those whose faces are not appearing. And it's kind of feeling more and more like community every time we get together. So it's just a delight to be here and looking forward to what unfolds today.
Yeah. Me too. So get your pens ready as well, because you'll be doing a bit of work as well. So remember, throughout
anything else.
So, say again, sorry.
So we wouldn't expect anything else.
Yes.
Let's go for it.
So remember, throughout the session, whatever gets brought up, remember to breathe. Because holding your breath is exactly how we acquire a past about something and carry it with you. Holding your breath attaches the pain of an experience to a reality in the mind. If that reality is triggered, even through external circumstances, do not justify it, there will be pain. So remember to breathe throughout this session. Notice what the breath is doing. So the previous chapter 7, Richard, a successful man in his late 30s, following the breakup of another marriage, had contacted Michael. Richard felt his life was a mess and was desperate and wanted Michael's help. We looked at the evidential mind. That mind can only give you information supported by your internal reality structure. Any information not in sync with that belief is blocked. Richard's core belief, I am powerless and get attacked by women. His mind must process his experience with women in a way that matches that reality. Any information not in sync with that belief was blocked.
So the evidential mind, just as a quick review, remember we talked about the Harvard research that says that in a time frame where we can hook somebody's brain up to electrodes and measure 10,000 active units of electrical activity. And what they concluded was, of those 10,000 units of electrical activity that were going on in total, the max amount of data that could be held in conscious awareness was 9 bits, a very tiny piece of what was actually firing from within. And when you realize that, you know, there are 10,000 units of information that could potentially be descriptive of what's happening, and you're only looking at 9 bits, then you're just looking at evidence. And realizing that the mind is an evidential device, the only evidence it can give you is evidence which you give it permission to give you. And the way that you give the mind permission to show you evidence is with your BS, your belief system, of course. Everybody has the same reality for those initials, BS, as I, right? Belief system. And so our belief systems tend to play themselves out in our perceptual constructs. And most people think that they have this set of windows called eyes, and they look out into the world and they see what's out there. The truth is, nothing could be further from the truth. You've never seen anything with your eyes. You will never see anything with your eyes. It's probably one of the biggest lies that has ever been told. Your eye is an antenna, quite literally. It's a receiver for light energy. And there is information carried on that light energy. And according to the information that enters the eye and the data that's stored within, whether it's from our genetic history or from our own experience, that which is resonated into activity, and the mind has permission to allow viewing whatever that information is, the mind generates the world that you see. The mind generates your reality. So we're going to define what's going on in the world as actuality, And the output of each person's mind is our reality. So it's been estimated in a time frame where those 10,000 brain cells are firing that actuality, what might be going on in the actual world, could be 20 trillion bits of data. So potentially we're looking at a 20 trillion bit world with 10,000 brain cells firing and seeing just 9 bits of data. And what shows up as our 9 bits of data, we're going to call reality compared to actuality. And to me, the most profound piece of information that comes with this work is recognizing that there's something that filters out from those 10,000 bits of information and gives permission to the mind to assemble a construct, a perceptual construct made of that 9 bits of data. And when you realize that, then you realize you've got a keyway. We'll talk about that a little bit later. You realize you've got a keyway into changing what the mind is showing you. And by changing what the mind is showing you, literally changing the energies you're engaging in, changing what's happening in your physiology, it changes everything. So that's kind of a window into where we're going with this.
So have you had any repeated situations or occur recently that you have wondered, why is this happening to me again? Why are they doing this to me again? Why am I doing this to myself again? Why can't life just cooperate? Choose one repeated pattern you have been experienced that you would like to work on in yourself as we go through this session, because this session may bring up stuff.
Hopefully.
Yes, hopefully, in relation to that experience. So you just jot that down. And remember to breathe. We're going to go into this bit of what is projection. So to answer this question about projection, more information on how the mind sets up what it sees was necessary. Once its reality is structured, the mind tends to see only in terms of its own content and pre-programmed filters. It tends to place the meaning it contains on anything similar to its past. To hammer the whole world looks like a nail. What is this, Richard? Asked Michael. So the same question to you, what is this?
Well, it's obvious, it's a house.
What is it? A house, of course. The truth is, it is just lines on a paper, replies Michael. A man from the jungle who had lived in nothing but caves would not look at those lines and say, oh, that's a house, has smoke coming out of the chimney. He does not have that meaning, that reality stored in his mind. He has no brain cells that contains that information. For him, there is no house in the lines on the page. House is a reality contained in a projected outwards from the mind of the observer, and only as an observer with a house in their past would call the lines on the page a house. You mean there's nothing out there? It's all in my mind? Richard asked, baffled. No, the lines on the pages are there. The external world exists. The point I'm making is that until we become aware, the objective world is just a framework upon which we project or hang what we have filed away in our minds. Imagine a child whose home life was miserable, a life of severe abuse. If he sees these lines on the page, what might happen? His blood pressure might rise, his eyes will probably bulge slightly, and he might be preparing to run. He is given the lines a meaning from his past, a meaning contained in his mind. Another child who loved lying on the couch in front of the fireplace while mom and dad rubbed her back sees the lines on our page. Images of wonderful food and family events might be triggered as she projects the meaning her mind contains upon the identical framework. Her mind does not generate a reason to run. Richard was beginning to grasp the subtle concept that a reality seen, thought, a mind is internal to perceiving mind. He fed back to Michael his understanding that as you look at the lines on the paper, your mind instantly gives meaning to them. The lines themselves have no meaning other than what your mind projects.
So let's take a look at a couple of different sources of information that help us to transition out of what the world believes, I'm looking at what's out there, to the truth of what's going on. And one, there's a quote from Carl Jung. I actually used this on my radio show today. And so that's what brought it to mind to use with this lesson. And he's talking about the unconscious and what it is that creates the unconscious experience. And here's what Carl Jung, and if you're not familiar, he's probably one of the most famous psychiatrists of all time. And here's what he says: whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world. And when we're talking about the world here, we're talking about the pictures in your mind. There's literally a whole world. We did a lesson on the Course in Miracles. If you haven't watched that video, you might want to go back and look at what is the world. And we pointed out that you could use the world in two ways: a capital W world and a lowercase world. So the child who's got a painful past looks at the lines on the board and calls it house, and has discomfort and pain and fear and is ready to run. His world, his perceptual construct coming from the content within his own mind, have him living in what we would call a lowercase w world. You know, the fact is there are lines on a board. That's the actuality. That would be the uppercase world. And now we have the lowercase world, that reality that, house, home, I better get out of here. I'm going to get hurt. And recognizing that when we pretend that something inside of us is the cause, or pardon me, is caused by something out there, then what happens is we cut ourselves off from the ability to change what's happening in here, in that lowercase w world. So the uppercase and lowercase. So here's how Carl Jung explains it. So whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world, perception, as an event. We meet ourselves in our perceptions of others time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life, until the unconscious becomes conscious. It will direct our lives, and we will call it fate. Everything that appears to irritate us about others can lead to understanding of oneself. So lived pain or turmoil is always an invitation to end denial. What's our definition of denial here? It's not the pretense that something doesn't exist. In this work, denial is the act of thinking or speaking as though something outside of us is the cause of what's moving inside of us. When we do that, because the pain that we're experiencing is caused from within us. The child who's now, 40 years of age and looks at those lines on the board and is in turmoil and upset, thinks the lines on the board are the cause of it. But what it is old energetic patterns that the child's carrying, or that the adult is carrying from childhood. And to pretend that it's caused from out there is to cut oneself off from what's happening inside. And to recognize that this world of perception is the world we think we see with our eyes, and it's just a hologram generated out of past content. It's a projection of the mind. Again, we see nothing with our eyes, we see with our brains. And there's no life in a hologram. People are living out of those projections from brain cells. The mind has this unique ability, and that is it can convert thoughts, data, information into pictures. Now, it's kind of like your TV set. A signal goes into the TV set, and there's digital information. And there's a conversion device within the TV set that turns that information into pictures. Your mind does exactly the same thing with your thoughts. So as long as my thought is it's outside of me, then I'm cut off from what's going on inside of me. It's a neuroscientist named Anil Seth, and there's a really excellent video. If you go to YouTube, Anil is spelled A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H. And he says this guy's a neuroscientist, and here's what he said. Perception is a mental construct generated by the mind, body, nervous system. The whole world we think we see is an hallucination unique to each person. When we agree on our shared hallucinations, we call it reality. So reality, the perceptual construct of the mind. You've got one, I've got one, everybody does. If my reality is accompanied by pain, then what I want to do is learn to collapse that reality and drop into the pain that underlies it and clean it out. If I'm that person who's now 40, who looks at or anything that stimulates the image of a house or home, brings turmoil and pain, it's a pretty uncomfortable way to live. But once I realize that's inside of me, if I have the tools, I can go in and remove those things. And the removal of the energetic patterns of the why is this happening to me again, painful experience is called forgiveness in the first century Aramaic language. So forgiveness has nothing to do with I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me. It's the tool with which I collapse my projected perception, picture in my mind that I think is caused by something out there. I collapse it. And by collapsing it, when it collapses, it drops into its own footprint, and I get a chance to access what underlies that and what is in need of healing. CIA spent I don't know how many millions doing some research on a book entitled The Study of Intelligence. You can go to our website. There's a copy of the book on the website if you want to download it. But one of the sections in it is on perception. You know, they're working to get the best intelligence analysis from their agents that they can. And so they put quite a bit of energy into studying perception. Here was the conclusion that the CIA came up with. Perception is demonstrably an active rather than passive process. It constructs rather than records reality. People construct their own version of reality. Your mind, based on content resonated by experiences, literally constructs the world that you see. So when you recognize that, what we're offering is that projection. Now, the culture tends to think of projection as taking something inside of you and putting it outside of you. No, that's externalization. That's why we've got this title refining that. Projection is there's something in my structure, information stored in my multi-generational database, which is called a body-mind unit. You know, my offering is that every cell in your so-called body functions as a storage device for information. And when called into activity, one, the quality of the information stored impacts the storage device itself, the cell, and that the mind then converts that information into pictures, are realities, and they can be collapsed. And the underlying data can be healed. Unless you think it's all coming from out there. And then, of course, you know, if he made you mad, if she made you sad, if they made you afraid, if they, then, of course, you're hopeless. It's hopeless. You're a victim. Look what they're doing to you. But, of course, you'll notice if you've been through a particular painful reality 87 different times with 42 different people, you're the one that was there every time. It's about you. It's the content of your mind. And we want to get over this projection, this externalization, generating pictures out of content and then pretending that our pictures are accurate about something other than me. You know, the perception, the constructs that come up in your mind always tell you more about the content of your mind than they tell you about the world you think you're looking at. Now, if you've been raised in the one world universal religion of blame, that's really bad news, because now all of a sudden you have to take responsibility. If you wake up to the fact that there's work to be done and you start to do your work, then you can alleviate yourself of every burden that you and your family system has ever carried and be free of it and return to the truth of who you are as a human being. And if you just hold a newborn and tap into the essence of the newborn, it gets really clear really fast that the human being is the presence of love. That's the experience we're designed to have. But if we come from generations and generations and generations and generations of hostility or fear, then the only realities we get to live in are the ones that are projected from the content of our minds. We want to put an end to that cycle, or at least we want to give people the option and the technology for how to do that. So that's where we're heading with this.
What was the gentleman you just mentioned on YouTube, Neil?
Oh, Anil, A-N-I-L, Seth, S-E-T-H.
I'll add that to the link as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so really, there are a couple of videos, but there's one on perception that's really excellent. He just, from a science point of view, as a neuroscientist, lays it all out. It's really pretty straightforward. And when you look at it and you really go, wow, then you realize how fooled we've been for how long on the earth, believing that our eyes are showing us things out there rather than constructs inside of our own minds. In the ancient teachings, the world of mental constructs was called appearances. I said, don't judge by appearances. Mind can make anything look like anything according to the content that's in it.
The projection results from the belief that someone else is responsible for the output of your mind. When that belief is held, the mind uses whatever internal information is triggered by another for building a reality about that person. Our denied and suppressed attributes show up as part of the image our mind builds of them. The mind successfully documents that our pain belongs to them. They are the cause of what we feel. The mind is actually a prism through which we view life. If there is any distortion, any kind of resentment or negative feelings, that resentment or negative feeling clouds perception and colors our view of the world. This is why the first law of seeing is love. A mind that constantly holds the condition of love, regardless of circumstances, distorts nothing and is incapable of projection. When there is distortion within the mind, we live within its meaning. If anyone who remotely resembles a person we hold a grievance up against comes into awareness through our senses, we will instantly project our reality onto them. We tend to believe that it is they who are the source of our grievance and pain, rather than accepting responsibility for the content of our own minds. This blocks the ability to heal what someone triggers in us and leads to experiencing the same realities repeatedly. Only when we take responsibility can we change the foundation of our perception. Denial keeps the source of our pain hidden. We as human beings are usually taught to interact in relationships in a way that guarantees a cycle-repeated experience. The first step in keeping that cycle going is to deny any involvement in causing our own pain. Then blame another and instruct that person in how he or she should change. If they refuse, we are taught to punish them to force change. If punishment doesn't work, we often leave or throw them out of our lives.
Well, one of the challenges with taking the geographic cure, throwing somebody out and I'm out of here, is of course you get to take you along, so your whole reality structure goes with you. And then you get to play the why is this happening to me again game. Just the way most people are living their lives.
Definitely played it a lot.
Haven't we all? I feel so blessed that the universe reserved this title for me. Why is this happening to me again? It's like everybody recognizes the title.
So how are you using denial to keep the source of your pain hidden in relation to the patterns you chose at the beginning? So you jotted down a pattern that you wanted to look at. How are you using denial to keep the source of your pain hidden? And if you do have any questions, you can raise your hands and I'm sure Michael will be happy to answer any questions.
Absolutely.
We have Corey with a hand. Can unmute.
Yes, the hidden pattern, or not the hidden, but the pattern. Must I be very sure what that is? Because I'm not really sure what it is exactly. What is?
You don't have to be.
No.
You know, you're familiar with, and you've got the worksheet process, and so it's the idea is to engage in forgiveness, not to try to figure out what's happening. You know, one of the things we point out in our codependence to interdependence intensive, I have a list of 12 what I call the pseudo solutions of the non-being mind. The things that the mind says, oh, I can take care of this with this, and they're all totally, completely false. And the number one pseudo solution is, if I could just figure this out.
Yeah.
You can't figure it out. But at any moment that you choose to, you can use forgiveness to collapse the projected reality. When you collapse the projected reality, depending on your level of willingness and your level of vitality, you get to touch into deeper and deeper hidden parts of your own mind. And as you do that, you get to transmute those pain-based energies until you're freed of it. Figuring out is the movie prize. Not going to take you there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And you know, it's like there's a demonstration I do in one of my intensives where I have a large bowl of water, and then I have a vase filled with clean water, and I take some water paints and I get some black paint on it and I put it in the vase. You know, I hold the vase up and I put it between myself and the room and say, no, see, I can see everybody very clearly. You know, everybody can see me, right? Yep. Well, and I put some black paint in and some gray and some green and some pink and red and yellow, and the water's getting, of course, murkier and murkier. And here I am looking through the glass. Somebody a couple thousand years ago said something about seeing as though through a glass darkly. And I'm now looking through this murky, muddy, and you know, the pink and red took over the coloring. So I look at everybody in the room, I go, oh, you know, everybody's very red here. Everybody's very red and pink. And what am I doing? I'm looking through my own mind. And then I offer, so here comes resolution. What am I going to do? I'm going to start pouring in clean water that displaces the murky water. And as the clean water pours in, the water gets clearer and clearer and clearer, and I get to see more clearly through that vase. Well, the mind is like the vase. If we've got generations and generations and generations of, and all you have to do, if you're not sure what your generations look at mom and dad, grandpa and grandpa, aunts, uncles, cousins, sisters, brothers, just look at what's going on in their world. And if they're living in a world based in some form of hostility and fear, and you're of the same genetics, then, you know, you can pretty much be assured what your world's made of. And I promise you, you know, if you look at in the ancient physics world that they were describing in what they call the New Testament, which supposedly is about religion, and it's not, it's about physics and physiology, psychology and genetics. One of the things that they said was, the sins of the fathers are passed, yea, unto 3 and 4 generations. Now, in Aramaic, you got to be careful, because if you do the Greek stuff on this, it gets really crazy. In Aramaic, the word sin is an archery term. It simply means off the mark. If you were on the archery range, you fired at the bullseye and you missed the bullseye, the scorekeeper would yell sin. You missed the mark. That's all the word means. So if I engage in an energy that's off the mark, hate, fear, rage, guilt, grief, drama, trauma, and every energy I engage in, literally, this body-mind unit is a device designed to store information. And it's stored in every cell of the structure, including the sperm and the egg. So were you to conceive a child tomorrow, that child would have in its structure every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every reality you've ever engaged in, and every issue you've never resolved. It's going to be stored in your structure and passed to the next generation. So let's say every energy that's off the mark is like me taking my paintbrush and putting it in the black paint and putting it in the vase. Black paint, putting it in the vase. Black paint, putting it in the vase. The vase is getting pretty dark, pretty hard to see anything through. All I see is the darkness in the vase. Most people in today's world, because the tools for resolving and cleaning up the mind are virtually not available, most everybody's living in this murky, dark, watching out for the pain and the trauma that somebody else is going to do to them again. When you start realizing, if you go back 4 generations, that's 31 lives. When you count yourself plus 4 generations, that's 31 lives. If you go back and, you know, do the math, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, do the math. And when you get to just 30 generations, you've got 1.6 billion people in your bloodline, in your genes. If you think that, let's take a simple interaction between you and another person. They've got 1.6 billion in just 30 generations. You've got 1.6 billion. Let's see you figure out the interaction of what are the energy patterns that are going on here. It's like, good luck, never going to happen. You can lay on the analyst couch for 500 years and you're not going to figure that out. But at any moment you choose, you can forgive it. You can collapse the end result of all those generational patterns through forgiveness. And when it's collapsed, you get to go in and clean up a little bit more of the water, a little bit more, a little bit more. And as you do that work, the glass, the device through which you think you see the world, gets cleaner and cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. However, if you're in denial, dissociation, hiding things from yourself, and then the things that you've hidden from yourself, somebody shows up to resonate for you and you project it into your brain's image of them, and then you take that projection, you pretend that it's actually outside of you. Good luck in figuring it out. At any moment you choose. You can, however, forgive as to that content, and it's how it's changed. It's how it's cleaned up. Does that make sense, Corey? Are you with me, Corey?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, yeah, that was good.
That fit? Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, let's rock on then.
This formula is guaranteed. If you use it, you can rest assured that someone who knows exactly how to access and show the hidden part of your mind will soon be knocking on your door again and again.
So the law of resonance simply says this: when two energy fields are in tune or in harmony with each other, there's an exchange of information between them. There's a transfer of information. So if I have a middle C tuning fork and I hit it on the desk and it's vibrating, and I put it near a second middle C tuning fork, what the law of resonance says is the second tuning fork is going to pick up on the energy of the first. It's going to absorb it, and it's going to go into motion. So motion is created by resonance in the inanimate world. In the animate world of humans, not only is motion created through resonance, but motion toward is created through resonance. So I love your visual here as usual, Yinka. But yeah, if you hold an unresolved, pained, traumatic energy in your structure, energy, remember, by definition, you know, my background's in physics, electronics and physics. So energy, by definition, is motion. Anything that creates motion creates an energy wave. Anything that creates an energy wave communicates about the energy that sourced that wave. And because of the law of resonance, motion toward is going to be created. Someone who has what we'll call the matching bag of garbage is going to show up in your world. Or someone who has the matching bag of beauty is going to show up in your world. Or someone with the matching bag of garbage who's also willing to do their work, and between you, you support each other in doing the work of healing, and you move more and more and more deeply into sweetness and beauty and love, your true nature. But rest assured, if you hold an unresolved energy, the purpose of the world is to kick you right square in the limitation. Now, my offering is life has built life for life. If I put sin, an energy that's off the mark in my structure, and the result of that ultimately is death, since life abhors death, life has set itself up so that you can't get away with killing yourself without being held accountable. Somebody's going to show up. Somebody's going to bring it up for you. When they bring it up, you're going to do one of two things. You're going to deny that it's yours, you're going to project it, and you're going to externalize it and go through it again. Or you're going to go, wow, I've been through this 87 different times with 42 different people. I just learned that there is a technology for collapsing these realities in my mind. I think I'll apply forgiveness and collapse this so that I can access the underlying energy that brought this person to knock on my door. And I'm going to work through it. And that's where healing happens. Hope that makes sense for everybody. Good definition of insanity. You got it, Yinka.
Yes, it is interesting to note that we project in order to avoid pain, and by doing so lock inside ourselves the very thing we are attempting to avoid. This is a good definition of insanity. And not the insanity we do at the weekend.
And let's face it, we're all insane. We've all done it.
So a key thought, projection results from the belief that someone else is responsible for my thoughts, my feelings, my reality, and the output of my mind. So if I understand correctly, by blaming you, I expect you to be responsible for my reality, even though it all comes from inside my own mind. If I try to control you through punishment, I'm kidding myself into believing that by changing you, I will never be forced to experience my pain again. Is that what you are saying? Asked Richard.
That's the simple bottom line.
So yes, changing someone else cannot change your reality. Only you can initiate and carry out that process. Only you can change what is in your mind. It also takes a lot of energy to keep the lie of projection in place and prevent the truth from entering your awareness.
Takes a lot of energy to hold that stuff down. You know, one of the most common comments that physicians get, or the reasons people visit physicians, is because they're depleted in energy. Carrying this load of unresolved trauma, generational trauma, is beyond the capacity of anyone.
So I can see the conflict in my own thinking. I am trying to achieve an unreachable goal, and I get so frustrated and I exhaust myself. That is so obvious now, and I see that what has been sapping my energy. A friend who is a medical doctor recently told me the most common complaint he hears is about lack of energy. He called it chronic fatigue. I'm starting to understand the source of my tiredness. It's like I've been carrying a 1-ton weight on my shoulder, Richard reflected. Maybe some of us can relate to that. So can you relate to Richard's experience and lack of energy, carrying 1-ton weight on your shoulders? The patterns you choose in the beginning of this session to look at, can you see any patterns of denial where you are projecting an unreachable goal towards others? Remember to breathe. And this is, you can type and share it in the chat. You can raise your hand and share it if you're open to sharing.
You want us to type, Yinka, or speak up?
You can speak up if you want to speak up, Helen.
Yeah, because
Either or.
typing. I'm writing like a madman tonight. My thumb's already aching. I'm trying to take so many notes. It's brilliant. Yeah, so my denial, it's shifting, but it's still definitely there. So it used to be, I sought to act in a way to test if someone really had my back and was going to be there for me. And I looked back, it was only in the last 2 years, I think, that I realized there was a history of me becoming ill when I was with somebody to unconsciously test if they were going to come through for me and be there for me. So it was good to identify that. But very recently, I was still aware I'm being massively triggered, my old wound of if I felt insignificant or unimportant, and this rage would come up. So I've worked out the denial just now is yeah, pretending that it's anyone else's responsibility but mine to let it go.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that will be helpful in realizing here that, and it's probably the second most common drug on the planet. Rage, anger is thought of as an emotion, but it really isn't an emotion. It's an anesthetic. It's literally an internally generated anesthetic that keeps us from feeling the pain that we're feeling. It's no different than, you know, a fifth of alcohol or, you know, pot, whatever drugs people are using to avoid feeling. Rage is one of the first ones that comes up. And as you start to dismantle the rage, then you get to start to come into direct confrontation with the underlying pain.
Yeah, it's usually
And
hurt,
that's
isn't
the
it?
stuff that drives most people to drink
Yeah.
or rage or busy. That's a
Anything
big
to
one.
avoid feeling it. Yeah.
Anything to keep from feeling this.
Yeah. Yeah. Because under anger is fear, isn't it? Right at the bottom, isn't it? Hurt and fear. Thank you.
Delighted. Glad you're here.
I'm glad I'm here too. I'm
Glad to be on the team.
Does anyone else want to
Thanks,
share
Martin.
theirs or put in the chat?
I got a call from someone today who was listening to my radio show, and he's been doing this work for about 22 or 23 years. Pretty intensively, especially the last 5 or 6 years. And he called me after the radio show today, and he wanted to share his gratitude, and that what he was finding as he was doing deeper and deeper levels of his work was that, you know, in the past, he was taught as a child to be polite and say thank you for everything. So, you know, it's like, that's kind of my thing. I'm thankful. I say thank you. But he said, what I'm discovering now, and I'm realizing that I'm reaching new levels of my work, is that it's not about saying thank you. It's that I'm living in gratitude. That it becomes a direct experience of gratitude for anything and everything, even the painful experiences. And my take is that just like hostility is one of the signs of the ego drugging itself, gratitude, just the sense of gratitude, again, not intellectually saying thank you, but the sense of gratitude, the appreciation for having a life, is one of the aspects of being. You know, when we open and we allow the truth of our being, love, to enter our forms, one of the things that enters into physiology is gratitude. So you'll know as you're doing your work, yes, we've all been trained to say thank you, but it's different than that. It's an energy that is that of just appreciation and sweetness, and it's a signal that one's moving to the next level of their work, to me.
We've got a
Hey,
question.
this is Jane. I'd like to share something.
Go on, Jane.
Please.
Great. I love that idea of gratitude as a way of life. I pushing my camera, but it's not,
Oh, we can
whatever.
see you. Oh,
Oh, I can't,
I can
but
see.
anyway,
I can see
okay,
you.
whatever.
You're there. You're good. We got you, Jane.
Ah, interesting. I guess I'm in another dimension here.
We see you in another world. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
That arc of light behind your head.
Wow. Okay. All I'm seeing is Yinka. Anyway, talk about distorted reality. I did do a 4-hour pineal gland meditation last night, so I don't know where I am. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yes, gratitude as a way of life. And I mean, I have a list a mile long, about, yes, victim, judging people, getting angry with people, and how dare they inflict their whatever on me. And I'm in a 12-step program, so I'm aware of this stuff and do it,
Ever.
do a 10-step inventory, like, what's going on with you here, honey? And I happen to be in a store on one day this week, and the cashier was just cold and rude. And I thought, how dare she? And, I thought, I'm going to find the manager and I'm going to talk to the manager. And then it was like, whoa, I just got this, brilliant flash of the obvious. Like, believe me, I've had my times of being a cashier and being a bitch. And then it was like, wow, have compassion for this
Projection.
woman. Oh my gosh, this woman was obviously rattled working in, minimum wage job. And I was like, I did my best to really appreciate her and thank her and say, wow, I'm imagining this is a really hard job. So thank you for showing up. And then I left and I felt better. And I'm guessing she
gift.
did. I don't know. And then just one other example on that same day, when many other things weren't going well, one of my neighbors sent me an email saying, could you sign so-and-so's birthday card? She's going to be 14. Now, I live in a communal housing situation, so I live with 32 other families. We all have our own units. And so I thought, how dare she send me this email and, bother me? And, this is my time. And if I wanted to sign a card, I would, and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, oh, somebody didn't do that for you when you were 14. Well, how about if you change the behavior and go and knock on that woman's door who offered to let you sign the card and sign the card? And I did, and I felt better. So, yeah.
Smoke and mirrors, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of work to do.
Haven't we all?
Yeah.
When I realized that what I can't literally be a space of active love for is my work,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
things start to accelerate in terms of the healing process. So,
Definitely.
somebody passed a thing across my Facebook page a while back, and I forget exactly the language, but it was something to the effect of, if it's looking to you like somebody isn't very loving, then give them some of yours. And that's what an abundant heart does. And a heart that's locked in pain and trauma tends to share that pain and trauma until they start to forgive, and then game changes. So nice work.
Thank you.
And there's a beautiful principle in the Course in Miracles that says, when you are healed, you are never healed alone. Your act there opens an energy space for anybody else on the planet that has a similar issue to also open and shift. So thank you.
Yeah, and I have a lot of gratitude for the many, many, many people that have been there for me, including you, including Inka, including people in this group, that helped lift me up. Yeah, thank you.
Delighted. Blessings.
And Corey's asked a question of, is pain just a feeling or something else?
My take, what I've come to understand, one of the things, if you look at the work of Bruce Lipton, cell biologist, a lot of good stuff on YouTube from Bruce. And what he's showing as a cell biologist is that when you think of thought, that thought, something supposedly non-physical, literally becomes a molecule called a neuropeptide. The neuropeptide circulates around in the system until it finds a cell with a receptor site that matches. And then the neuropeptide lands on the receptor site and inserts itself inside the cell. Two things. What Bruce is saying is, when it inserts itself inside of the cell, if we were looking from inside of the cell, what we would see is chemistry, what we call chemistry, entering the cell. It's a neuropeptide. It's literally the energetic pattern of a neuropeptide, but it shows up as what we call chemistry. And my take is, what the insight that I got when I saw that, or started to realize that was how it worked, is that the system has been set up to warn us what our creative process is doing. So when we engage in a creative process, when we think a thought, that thought becomes a neuropeptide, landing on a cell, the cell is wired to warn us what it is we're engaging in. Is this healthy, good, wonderful stuff? Or are we in thought disorders that we need to be correcting? So the emotion, to me, comes at the moment where the neuropeptide hits the cell and a warning signal is radiated. If it's pain, if it's trauma, if it's some form of deleterious energy, then my offering is our physiology is warning us, this is not where you want to go. If it's sweetness, it's beauty, it's peace, it's gratitude, you're on track. Which means, most of us have got a whole lot of changing to do. A whole lot of habits need to go. And the habits tend to be generational. You go back to the ancient Aramaic language where they understood this, and they said, look to the lives of the fathers. And of course, fathers not being male, but fathers and mothers, look to the lives of the parents, really. For ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. Most people never come out of the shadow of the mind energy of their parentage, of their family system. And so most live in the repeated dramas and traumas and pass it on to the next generation. I can't tell you how many hundreds of people over the years have said, when I was a kid, I can remember saying, I'm never going to be like my father. And now I'm my father. Realizing that mind energy has just gone from generation to generation. And most people are run by that. You got to get out of the desert. That story of the Jews wandering in the desert isn't about this group of people being lost in a hot, sandy place that's 35 square miles. The desert there is a code word for the unconscious. Most people, the first 40 years or so of their lives, live in a state of unconsciousness, just playing out, spewing out whatever the previous generation spewed on them. And you'll remember, if you look at that story, it was a metaphor. They were trying to explain something to people who didn't have the comprehension. In that metaphor, you remember what had to happen for the Jews to get out of the desert? What did they say had to happen? They said the old generation had to die off. Now, the root word generation is genari. It means cause. All of the causes held in mind, which is held in body, have to be removed if we're going to get out of the influence of the old generations. And what was the promise? If you weren't in the desert, where were you? You're in the promised land. Now, is that some sort of religious place that God set up? No, that's not. It's the truth of you get to live in gratitude and aliveness and joy. That's the promised land. And you get to be a conscious co-creator. That's what they were trying to explain to people who were steeped in such horrific violence. It was just beyond comprehension. You get to live in conscious co-creation. You originate mind energy. That mind energy is based in your true being in love. You refuse all of the responses that come out of carbon-based memory, that come out of the body-mind unit from the past generations. You forgive us to those things, and you embody. You pour clean water into the vase, into the device, until it's cleared up. And then gratitude and aliveness and joy are the accompaniment of every experience. We recently went through my wife's father passing. we actually had a mind shifters and still point breathing workshop. And in that workshop, Jeannie actually breathed as a participant in the workshop. And she had, we've been married 20 years, and right from day one, when we met, she shared her terror and trauma at her father, knowing one day he would pass. And so this particular day we're doing, her dad had gone into the hospital and we were going to go and see him. It was Saturday afternoon, and she did still point breathing process while I facilitated the group. And in that still point process, she got into this really deep state and was able wholeheartedly, like with total and complete support and caring, say, Dad, you've had enough. If it's time for you to go, then let go. We finished that workshop and we got in the car and went over to the hospital. And we were with him about a half an hour. And here's a man who, he had gotten COVID. We couldn't keep his oxygen levels up, so we ended up having to put him in the hospital. And in 11 days, best we can tell, they didn't get him out of bed once. At 87, when you're working with a walker and you're not out of bed for 11 days, you don't walk again. So it had been about 1.5 years since he had come out of the hospital. So here's a man who hasn't gotten out of bed in 1.5 years without, at least he was what was considered to be a 2-person lift. It took 2 people to get him into a wheelchair. He didn't use a walker anymore. He hadn't turned over in bed in 1.5 years. We were with him about a half an hour. We were showing some pictures of his granddaughter, and he smiled and was having fun with that. And we fed him a little bit. And he was laying there, and we're both standing. Jeannie was on one side of the bed, and I'm on the other side of the bed. And he just sat bolt upright. And you know how you see a cartoon character and their eyes are on springs, they pop out of their head? Well, her dad sat bolt upright, hasn't sat up in 1.5 years. His eyes just popped big. And he was looking up and to the left, really like tight, like he's trying to look through his skull bone. And the energy in the room turned to such a sweet and sacred energy. And he took his last breath and lay back down again. It was gone. The nurses jumped to attention and went, "Oh, we'll go get the emergency and we'll bring him back." And Jeannie was able to say, no. Let him go. He's finished. Let him go. And while there have been moments where she's had tears of wish he were here, when we think about the moment of his passing, it was joyful. It was like watching a miracle happen. And as you learn to bring the truth of your being to every experience, you bless every experience with the presence of your being. And I think that's about one of the highest expressions we can have as human beings. But if you're always living in the world, oh, look at them, look what they're doing to me. Kind of hard to get to that state. And what forgiveness does is it collapses those projections and opens a space for healing. Opens a space for all of that to be embraced in conscious, active, present love. Everything that comes out of your mind, when embraced in conscious, active, present love, if it's not love, it's going to be transmuted. It's going to heal just that fast. And that's the idea of forgiveness. That's what forgiveness does for us.
Corey's raised a hand.
Go for it.
Michael, sorry, after this wonderful story what you told, and that was so touching, I have something different. And yeah, that is I had in that morning, I had with my landlord, I had a situation, and I made that exercise with love, and I have no hostility against her or something like that. And I thought then at noon, I thought I have done a good work. I felt like somehow, not I like her, but I was not in a, I was in a good place with her personally.
Right.
And came, and then I went to the letterbox, and then I opened, and then came the pain somehow, and there was another letter from her. Yeah, that was a really uncomfortable letter against me, and that. And then I was, I did not, I thought I had done a good work, but
It sounds like you have. And it sounds like you got to your next layer and your next level.
but even with that letter, what was really how can I say, that was a really, yeah, that was a letter which is really hard to read.
So let me translate that then. If you were looking at that letter from a space of active present love, the way that I would suspect you'd describe that letter would be that it was a letter that contained a lot of her pain.
Mm-hmm.
If you weren't able to view it from a place of active present love,
Yeah.
then your description would probably be, yeah, and when I read that letter, she was really inflicting a lot of pain on me. Which perception is totally up to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so if I pick up a letter and I find myself in a lot of pain, not over the letter, but over what the letter has brought up in me,
Mm-hmm.
then that letter has given me the opportunity to clean up this next layer of my own unconscious mind. Remember that quote from Jung that we shared? Let me just go back and get that, because it fits so perfectly here. So whatever is rejected from the self appears in the world of perception as an event. We meet ourselves in our projections of others time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life, even something like a letter. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will direct our lives and we'll call it fate. Everything that appears to irritate us about others can lead to understanding of oneself. So what I hear you saying is, you still have some dark paint in your vase, and your landlady's letter resonated that. And my offering would be the opportunity to dig out a worksheet and pour in some more clean water to clean the next layer of that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just comes to me that, I'm not sure if this is right, but would that suggest as well that the goal would be that I've done this work and I've healed this part of myself, and now my goal is that everything else should be perfect, that she should like me.
Everybody in the world should fall in line.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that was helpful. Yeah. Yeah.
And Helen asks a question, worksheet ? Helen, there are several videos in Yinka's YouTube page where we've introduced and walked through a step-by-step forgiveness process. We call it a reality management worksheet. And so if you go back into Yinka's archives, or if you go back to our archives on YouTube, you can find my YouTube channel at, just go into YouTube and type in Michael RYCE, and you'll find my YouTube channel. And there are several videos there where we've done a worksheet with someone, a step-by-step. Here's how the technology of forgiveness works from the 1st century Aramaic. And this whole book is based on that. What we're leading up to, the last chapter of the book, chapter 24, is a step-by-step worksheet process. But you don't have to wait for that. There are several sessions that we've done on worksheets. And so you can also go to our website which is whyagain.org. And if you look in the archives, you'll see a link with a microphone on it, and drill down into the archives. There are at least 20 different radio shows where we've walked somebody step by step through the whole worksheet process.
Oh, that's
You can also go to your app store on your phone, and if you type in the word Heartland, one word, HEARTLAND, Aramaic, ARAMAIC, forgiveness, you'll see an app come up with a red glowing heart on it. Download it, and you can do the worksheet step by step right there on the app. And if you have any questions about it, right on the app, you can just click a button and ask your question. Gee, I'm on step 3 and this just doesn't make any sense. What's going on here? And hit send. Jeannie will get that. She'll read it on our next radio show. We do the radio show 5 days a week. So she'll read it within a few days. If you sent it on Friday afternoon, we'd be doing it on Monday. And we'll answer the question on the radio show. And she'll send you a link back to the show so you can go and listen to that answer. Or you can call the radio show or go into the chat room of on Mindshifters Radio, and you can ask your questions and live interaction. We're there to support and instruct on doing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I've not been able to join until tonight, so I'm aware I'm behind. So is this night 7 of 24 chapters? Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Honored and delighted.
Thank you.
I've just added all the details in and just a couple of the worksheets on YouTube.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and we're actually on chapter 8. It's 8 of 24. Yeah. And we actually, in the year previous, we covered the book. We did 3 chapters at a time. So you can go back and you can get a quick review. All of those videos are there. You can go back and, over the period of a year, we covered the whole book. And now we decided to drill down on another level and get more into each chapter. So.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah. You can download the book free from our website. Unfortunately, we can't sell you when it's out of print, but you can go to someplace like Amazon, and you can usually find the book on Amazon or eBay for, $3 or $4. It's almost embarrassing.
Yeah, it must be. Thank you.
Okay.
Not embarrassing, annoying. But you've forgiven that, clearly.
Yes. Done some work around that.
Mm.
And I still managed to find the book, even though I'd never heard of you before.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting story, how it just showed up in your mailbox.
I really like buying secondhand books, though. I love the fact that someone's loved it before.
Yes.
And thumbed it, and, yeah. I'll try and go to a secondhand store if I can.
I often got the notes in it.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, because we're out of, it's out of print now. I often will jump on Amazon or on eBay and I'll buy a stack of them. And it's always fun to go through and look at what impacted people, look at their notes and that sort of thing. Highlighting. It's always fun to do.
Yeah, definitely.
So Richard's tendency.
I think we've got another hand up. Shams?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Hi, Michael.
Hey, welcome.
Yinka, good evening.
Good evening.
I was just thinking about a comment was made earlier about it's basically setting the intention. So the intention was to test the world or its people. And when we think about that the action follows the intention, it's important what intention we set out. So if we're going to look for it, we'll probably find it. 10 years later, we'll be like, there it is. Or in the next 10 minutes, we'll find there it is. So I thought that was a powerful share, and thanks for the courage to share that. But it brought me to the question of intention, to the point of intention. And I was also thinking that, so in the space of the attitude of gratitude, you've set the intention And it's in that I found that it was the busiest day of entitled people that were on the phone with me.
Mm.
And it can be really exhausting because you set a high intention. So you'll have a high test, is what I found on that particular day.
Yeah, my
Yes,
take
so-
is when we stand in enough willingness, then life is going to deliver the situations that are going to show us the parts of us that are unwilling. And carrying that burden is a load. There's where the energy gets sucked right out of us. If I'm willing to breathe and process when people don't fulfill, and actually I'll offer just a little refinement to it, and that is that intentions are actually the raw material of goals, and it's goals, those things we make a commitment to, that really drive the perceptual mind. And if you look at the forgiveness process, you'll see that at the core of it, you look at anybody, you'll notice that, unless somebody's just a generally miserable person, they're pretty happy with everybody in the world as long as everybody's fulfilling their goals. They only go into upset when someone violates a goal that's held for them. And the goal in Aramaic in the forgiveness process is actually the key way into healing the mind, is recognizing that my perception, the thing that determines, 10,000 brain cells are firing, I get to see 9 bits of data. Obviously, something has to filter or drive that process and determine which data my mind's going to use today, or in this particular situation. And it's the goal that does that. And the essence of forgiveness in Aramaic is to recognize that if I load a goal in my mind and my mind serves up hostility or fear, that's a burden I'm carrying. And the essence of forgiveness in that situation is I cancel my goal. And when I cancel my goal, the 9-bit perceptual construct in my mind that was driven by my goal collapses. And when it collapses, that's what gives me access to the underlying burden that I'm carrying, the opportunity to open it up, expose it to love and forgive it, remove that burden. So you're right on the core of forgiveness. It's about goals.
If I may, can I just follow up on something that
Please.
I heard differently today? Just on the topic of it's about Pharaoh. I saw Pharaoh in a different light today, and I thought it was quite a wow moment. So basically, when Moses came to Pharaoh as a king, Pharaoh was surprised by what Moses was saying.
Right.
So Pharaoh was like, "You telling me to worship God, but I am God," and everyone says that. So at the time, which I didn't know, he was a 12-year-old boy sitting on a throne, ruling the whole world and saying, I'm God, I'm God. And everybody around him was saying, you God, you God.
Yep.
So it's interesting about this idea of perception and projection. So you put it on this kid and you say, you are that. And he says, I am that. And then there's nothing else but that. And to think, and so
that fills the 9-bit mind. That becomes everybody who engages in that becomes their reality.
That's it. Exactly. Yes. And so it was just saying that in a sense that this awareness of sitting on the throne, it's like it's our ego sitting on the throne.
Yes.
Pretending to be, enthroned and deserving and entitled, and all that. And the ego's glad to take it. And some egos are inflated by this idea. And perhaps in us, we have a little Pharaoh throwing tantrums and screaming orders, like kill the firstborn male, kill all of them. That's that's the extreme case, but perhaps we are those little Pharaohs throwing out tantrums. Anyway, it was just a lovely way of me re-understanding that story.
And killing the firstborn male would be the male in terms of energy. The male is thought of the originative faculty, and it's like kill off everybody else's originative faculty, so I'm the only one that can do that.
That's it.
Get rid of that and make of everyone else a slave, make of everyone else a servant, subservient to the one who sets the goals and governs the whole game. So that killing the firstborn male was not necessarily about physically killing, but getting rid of the ability of everyone around to originate anything for themselves that might go in offense of the king or the pharaoh.
That might threaten my story.
Exactly. Your goals. Yes. And each time somebody shows up that violates a goal, and you look at the worksheet process and you cancel that goal, and you get to drop into the hidden depth that shows up as the pharaoh in your own mind. And you get to dismantle that selfish, self-centered, controlling self that's based in usually fear. You get to get rid of that. People who don't understand how to do that, the burden of that, trying to carry that thing and make it govern the world, it's just more than anybody can carry. But as you dismantle it, you make space for the truth of your human life to show up in your own physiology. You knock that guy off the throne. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's a great scene. I actually oftentimes assign people to watch the movie The Ten Commandments. It's very powerful. And it's interesting, people with all their goals and how, they all want to be Pharaoh. Basically, if you look at that whole group that's following Moses, they all want to be Pharaoh, and they all want to tell everybody what to do. And, they're now at the bottom of the barrel. They're up against the sea. Pharaoh's men are coming. They're all going to be killed. And Moses turns around and opens the sea, and they all escape, and Pharaoh gets destroyed. And it's interesting when you watch this, the way that this was captured so powerfully in the production. And then, no more has the sea closed, and everybody starts to whine at Moses for why I want this and I want that and I want, they're right back to the complaining selves. And, that's the self that needs to be removed from each of us. That's the self that blocks this state of being and this state of gratitude. That whole story is a metaphor for the journey each of us ultimately have to make. Thanks for bringing that up. It's right on track. Looks like dark clouds, Yinka.
Yes. So Richard's tendency to run from conflict provided an example for us to examine the dynamics of projection in his life. I explained in a relationship based on projection, each believes the other is responsible for his or her projections and carries their hidden, unhealed upsets as a burden. As a result, each mind has a distorted picture of what is actually happening. This distortion results from blockages of truth. The mind projects its own error onto others and cannot see the truth about itself.
Yeah, when you realize you've got a 9-bit mind and you live, well, actually, our next section is going to be blockage of truth. So I'll save that one on blockage of truth. But just suffice to say at this point, if you don't honor truth, then the mind becomes quite literally your enemy rather than your friend and your support.
So the mind has unconsciously used its hidden information to build its image of them. We then pretend that our mind's image is a true and accurate picture of the outside world when it is only a true and accurate picture of what is happening inside of us. It's just a projection of a condition in our own minds.
And that, that projector there, by the age of 4, most everybody in this culture is a card-carrying member of the one world universal religion of blame. You made me mad, you made me sad, you hurt me. And if you live in that religion, you've got to shift, you've got to let go of that religion and step into one of responsibility. Oh, this is inside. Why am I feeling this? Because it's inside of me. rather than, why am I feeling this? Because they did whatever they did. Pained perception always comes from pained content, not from events in the world. Pain perception comes from pained content. If you never clean up your pain, then you can rest assured you're going to live your life in pain. If you clean it up, even if the same things happen that you thought caused your pain, you'll stay connected to a space of joy and aliveness, because that's who you are. That's your true nature. Pharaoh doesn't appreciate that very much.
Sorry, Michael, can I just stop you there?
Go for it.
Would you agree that it's not actually our true nature, it's the perception in the veil of the illusion? Our true nature is love, yeah?
That's what I was saying. Yes, absolutely. The truth about us, and the way that, you know, people will say, well, define love for me. I can't define love, but we've got an experiential definition of love. Go back and hold the newborn child. Remember a time when you held a newborn, and tap into the essence of that newborn. And that's a question that Jeannie and I, when we traveled, you know, for 40 years, we were on the road, or at least, you know, 20 years before I met Jeannie, in the 20 years we've been together. And we've asked this question of tens of thousands of people all over the globe. And everybody's answer when they describe the essence of the newborn is some variation on the theme of love. And then I asked the question, so as you hold that newborn and you realize their essence is love, is the newborn loving you, or is the newborn love? And everybody has to say, well, yeah, the newborn doesn't even know I'm here. Of course, the newborn is love. So notice we live in a culture whose specialty is to knock the love out of us and then send us out in the world to find somebody to love, or somebody to love us. And now we're on a totally false journey, thinking that what was knocked out of me by my power person, I can get from you. And if I don't get it from you, boy, am I going to puke on you. I'll even divorce you, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's crazy time. I mean, and it's, you know, it's like the whole game is backward until we uncover the truth of who we are as human beings.
Yeah, and it's almost an act of rebellion to do so, because there's a lot that benefits the money-making machines in the world to keep us exactly that. So it's almost an act of rebellion to self-love and get through the layers, because, you know, it's kind of handy that we're wanting something outside ourselves, or we need to buy that thing for a lot of industry and money-making people to keep us subsumed. So
you know, Pharaoh, the king, really is an interest in having subjects who know themselves as human beings. Because if the king wants to steal his neighbor's property and you have to kill his wife and his children, his dog to do it, humans aren't going to do that. You got to knock the humanness out of them. Love will not do the things that kings want them to do.
Or governments.
Or well, yeah, same thing. The symbol of the king.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yep.
Amazing.
It is. All we have to do is convert Pharaoh. The one in ourselves first.
And do what first? Sorry.
Convert the Pharaoh in ourselves. That's the first order of business.
Yeah.
Everybody's in agreement. We want to change the Pharaoh out there, but am I willing to really truly confront the one in here and clean it up? It's a big task.
Yeah, it is a big task.
All an inside job.
Yes.
Great visual. Great visual.
So Richard almost explodes with excitement as he expressed his thoughts. You mean it's all an inside job, he tendered. As long as I pretend that you are responsible for my reality, I block the truth. Being out of touch with the truth is at the root of my feeling of powerlessness. Once I grasp that, it is my holding on that keeps me re-experiencing the same painful scenario. I can get out of a cycle, by using the tools.
That's it.
Mhm.
That's the core of it.
This is actually starting to make sense. I'm surprised I feel hopeful, like here is something I can do, Richard explained. I've always been terrified around women and never did understand how could I feel that so powerless in front of women. No one can actually make another feel anything. However, others can trigger the internal mechanism, and whatever is there will surface. Richard, if you have a reality called powerlessness and someone stimulates that belief about yourself, you will experience the effects of that belief as feelings of powerlessness. Keep in mind that you feel something because that reality is within you. No one can make you experience a reality that you haven't already treated within yourself. Key thought: we tend to dislike and resist in others what we suppress in ourselves.
Hope that's fitting and making sense for everybody. This is like, this is the foundation from which you get to move into forgiveness. And literally, it means confronting and dismantling everything based in hostility or fear from anywhere in your heritage, anywhere in your generations. Literally, this is the invitation of real spiritual work, is for you to step inside your own mind and face and remove everything that's never been resolved by anybody in your bloodline. It's a big task. It's a major piece of work. But once you realize it's there to be done, like, what else is there to do?
Why should I forgive them? Richard
Quipped.
I didn't suggest forgiving them. I suggested forgiving the realities in your mind. True forgiveness does not mean letting someone else off the hook. You can't forgive anyone or for anything. True forgiveness is a tool for changing realities in your own mind. But I'd like to take up that topic in more detail later. That's going to be for our next chapter.
So notice how the whole thing has been turned backward by the world. And if I'm in pain, if I'm a member of the one world religion of blame, then I know that my pain is your fault, but it's okay. I'll be big about it. I'll forgive you. I'll let you off the hook because of the pain that you've caused inside of me. Well, if I let you off the hook for what I've created inside of me, have I done anything to advance my life? No. And the whole world is playing this, I forgive you, or I forgive myself. Or I've been forgiven. You will never be forgiven for anything. Because forgiveness isn't about letting yourself or someone else off the hook or anybody letting you off the hook. Forgiveness is the tool with which you collapse the projections of your own mind. You stop externalizing those projections. You collapse and drop into the root of them. Bring the root energy up. It might be 10 generations old, and apply the active presence of love. Bring that world that is filled with pain to the world of your true beingness, and that which is filled with pain automatically dissolves. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to do anything with it. You just need to open the veil. In the ancient teachings, when they said the veil of the temple must be rent in twain, they weren't talking about a purple curtain in a church. The veil of the temple is the barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious mind. The body is the unconscious mind. If there is a disease in your body, it's because there's a dis-ease energy. Remember sin, off the mark? There's an off the mark energy in your mind. And where it is stored in your cells, it interferes with chemistry. Remember, neuropeptide becomes what we call chemistry entering the cell. There's the root of all physical disease. Oh, let's breathe on that one.
Because is there any realities in your mind that need your forgiveness?
Don't we all?
And these questions are just as well to probe the awareness of that as well within yourself.
Fitting, making sense for everybody? Any questions? So recognize here that if you choose to, people do crazy things sometimes. So I choose to let that person off the hook for that. And I call that what it is. I choose to pardon that person. Unfortunately, the Greeks turned around and called pardoning forgiveness. So if I call pardoning forgiveness and I pardon somebody, I think I've done my forgiveness work, and I'll never do the work of removing this from me. And if I never do the work of removing this from me, then I get to, because I'm a creator, live in the why is this happening to me again experience. So I choose to pardon someone. Yeah, what you did was crazy. All right, I acknowledge it, and I will pardon that. And now I'm going to go in and do my forgiveness work, recognizing that the root of my pain is always inside of me. Make sense, everybody? Questions, thoughts, answers, ideas?
Yeah, that makes sense. So you can't just say the words, it's the action that will free ourselves.
It's a skill that you develop. It's a skill and a practice. I mean, it literally is the practice of just collapsing the constructs of your mind, getting quiet and listening and letting yourself embrace what underlies the pain.
Mm.
And as you do, everything shifts, everything changes. Well, what do you think, Miss Yinka?
Yeah, because I think there's a slide. Oh, our final slide of breathe.
Let's breathe.
Yeah, so the best exercise, Michael knows, to practice and strengthen your ability to hold space of love is to close your eyes and allow yourself to become quiet. With your awareness focused inside, think of that which inspires in you the clearest, strongest, most powerful love you are capable of feeling.
When I do that exercise, I go back to the moment when my daughter's head delivered into my hands. She opened her eyes, crystal clear, looked in my eyes and grinned at me, and literally sent me into another dimension, literally sent me into one of the most powerful experiences of the presence of love and literally being out of my mind. I was actually, it was a weekend. We birthed our daughter at home, and it was a Friday afternoon at 3:40 in the afternoon. We realized my wife was in labor, and at 4:40, Krista Joy was born. She actually hadn't been named. We hadn't got a name for her. And during the birth, it was just clear this was Krista Joy. And there were people who were coming from some distances. This was before cell phones. She's now 41. She wouldn't be happy with me sharing that. But so I couldn't contact people coming from, we were in Atlanta. There's one guy coming from Miami. And so at 7 o'clock in the evening, I open the door and welcome people. And I've got Krista Joy, who's been with us for about 2 hours now, on my arm. And people are like, no, yeah, no, she wasn't. Yeah, she was. And I went down. I had a classroom in my home at that time. I went down to the classroom to teach, and I could not think a thought. I was out of my mind. And it stayed that way for some significant time period. And from that experience, I offer that in order to heal, you got to be out of your mind. Most people are trying to figure this out. You can't figure it out. But you can reliably, consistently, persistently be out of your mind, which means you step into the state of being and then bring what's in your mind, what's in your genes forward to that state of being. And that's where healing occurs. That's what we're here to share with you.
I just want to say, if you've never held a newborn baby as well, that's why I've got a pet up there, because I've had the same sensations. I've got kids and I've held little puppies, and I had found a stray kitten once, and it was wild and feral. But there was a moment where, just because I had to get it to tame it to be able to bring it in, and I just held it on my chest and just held it while it was going wild. And just in that moment, that it just calmed, everything just calmed, and I just dropped into that feeling, and the kitten just dropped into that feeling, and I had that kitten for 6 months, and then it was able to integrate with families, and it got a lovely family and still alive to this day. And so it's not just a baby. If you've not held a baby, you can tune into that with a pet.
It'd be powerful to look in the mirror and do that holding of yourself as well.
Mm-hmm.
To recognize that you deserve to have that experience of yourself as love. And, you know, part of doing that is to step out of this whole story and this whole game of I love you. Because love isn't a verb, it's a noun, it's a state of being. But when we tell the mind that we're supposed to go out and find somebody to love or somebody to love us, we just set up a whole false driver for life. So if anyone has any questions or thoughts, otherwise, Miss Yinka, I think we're complete, aren't we?
We will be, yes, if there's no questions
Awesome.
or thoughts. I think this is our next. So our next chapter is chapter 9 of blockage of truth, and that's, I can't remember what date that's for. I'll just check the date for that. So that'll be the 14th of September.
Cool. Looking forward to it.
I'm going to just leave us with, a key thought first. I'll leave us with this key thought. My mind can only show me my reality. It may or may not match actuality, but it always matches what is going on inside of me.
Yep. It's kind of the good news and the bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us. It's been a privilege and an honor.
That was amazing.
Join us on the radio show.
Yeah. And I shall leave us with some music to play us out with.
When does the show air? What time in the UK, Michael?
It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here in Eastern time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. I think you're 5 hours behind us there, so it would be 6 o'clock, 6 to 7. And if you don't have phone access to the US, you can go to Blog Talk Radio. They're very private about information you share with them. You can set up an account so you can then listen with your computer to the show, and you can go into a chat room. So if you can't, if you don't have phone access, most people in the States call into the show. And but if you don't have phone access, then you can type in the chat room any questions, and or you can do the app. And if you have questions in the app as you do the forgiveness process, just type it in the app. Jeannie will get it and we'll answer it on the next show and send you back a link to it.
You can actually listen without setting up an account. It just means that you can't ask any questions. But to be able to ask questions, you need to be able to sign in.
Right.
And if it doesn't take much detail. I think it just takes your name and email.
There is a new system in place now through Blog Talk, and I'm not that familiar with it. that we just, I think, Jeannie just found out about a couple of weeks ago. And that is that if you go in the chat room and you ask Jeannie for a link for each show, it has to be a fresh link. She can give you a link, you can click it, and then with your computer, you can call in and talk on the show. They have, I think, we can give 5 different people that a link to do that. So if you set up an account, get in the chat room and ask Jeannie for a link, she'll send it to you, and you can do the show live and ask questions, and we'll have a conversation. So thank you all for joining us. Have a blessed one till we see you in a couple of weeks. Blessings.
Everyone.
Thank you so much.
You are welcome and deserving. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Thank you both. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you.
All right.
Amazing.
See you.
Thank you.
Great.